Now, they say we want a king. Was it wrong for Israel in chapter 8 and following to ask of 1 Samuel, to ask for a king, like the other nations? I was taught that Israel was wrong because they were trying to be like the other nations, and so they're just trying to fit in and compromise and be just like the other nations and stuff, and that this was wrong for them to ask for that. However, that's wrong. That's wrong. Moses, back in Deuteronomy chapter 17, Moses, at the end of Moses' life, he's writing the book of Deuteronomy, Moses says, you will have a king like the other nations. And he uses those very same, exact same words. You will have a king just like the other nations. Is all from Deuteronomy, then moving through Joshua, through Judges, expecting this king to come. Moses told them they would have a king. Is Israel to have a king? Ultimately, does Israel, the whole kingship thing is moving toward whom? Who is the ultimate king of Israel? David. And David moves on to whom? Jesus, who is the what? Son of David, king of Israel. And he shall reign forever and ever. Okay, and he shall reign forever and ever. So the whole kingship thing is moving to David, to Jesus Christ, and the rule of Christ over Israel and over the world forever. So the notion of this establishing of this kingship, is this in God's plan? Is this something wrong that Israel has asked for a king? No. Yeah.
Right? Didn't they also, did someone, one of those, I think maybe Moses or someone said that when you fall away from God, this will happen?
Okay. No, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't know. You'll have to pull the reference up on that and things. But Moses said that they would have a king like the other nations. And Samuel now, they're requesting a king like the other nations, just like Moses said. Now, I agree with you that they're doing it for the wrong motives, probably. But the quote is, in other words, they were to expect a king, they were to expect a prophet like Moses, and Deuteronomy 18, a prophet. Now, Israel had priests. Did the other nations have priests? Israel had priests, the other nations had priests. So they had priests like the other nations. Did the other nations have prophets? We've seen Balaam and some of the other prophets. The other nations had prophets. Israel had prophets as well, like the other nations. Did the other nations have judges? Like the other nations. Israel had judges like the other nations. And so for them to expect a king like the other nations, Moses told them they would have a king like the other nations. The problem, it needs to be established correctly. The problem was not that they wanted a king like the other nations. This is the problem. The problem was who was Israel's king at this time? The king at this time was God. And so by calling for a king like the other nations, the problem was not that they called for a king, because God told them they were to expect one. The problem was they were calling for another king in lieu of God, in rejection of God. Does God have feelings? Does God have feelings? I want to read a verse here. Did God's feelings get hurt? Did God's feelings get hurt? Check this out. Chapter 8, verse 7. Start with verse 6. And when they said, give us a king to lead us, this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord. So Samuel, by the way, is Samuel hurt? His kids weren't good, right? His kids were bad. So they come and say, hey, Samuel, we don't want your kids. We want a king. Is that going to hurt Samuel? Samuel's going to feel what? Rejection? He's rejecting his family and stuff. So Samuel goes to pray to the Lord. And here's how the Lord responds. Check this out. It's beautiful. And the Lord told him, listen to all the people are saying to you. It is not you, Samuel, they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king. That's the issue. Should Samuel feel rejected? God's saying, Samuel, don't feel rejection. It's not you they're rejecting. It's me. That's a pretty strong statement from God, realizing that his people don't want him to be king anymore. Okay? And that, I think, is the issue. And so it's a beautiful verse there. And you get to kind of see into the inside of God. Now, they're going to go out and make a king. Who's the first king they're going to get? Saul. Okay? Saul comes out in the Ramah area up there. And what's Saul doing? In chapter 9, Saul's out chasing his father's... See, remember that? chasing his father's donkeys, right? And he's looking for his father's donkeys on the hills. And he's roaming the hills trying to find these donkeys. And finally his servant says, hey man, it's getting late. We've been out for a long time. We got to find these donkeys and stuff. And the guy says, well, I know that there's a seer here that we can basically go to, and the seer will tell us where the donkeys are, and then we can find the donkeys. And so in chapter 9, verse 9, you get this statement. It says, the servant said to him again, look, he said, I have a quarter of shekel of silver, and I will give it to the man of God so that he can tell us what way to take. Formerly in Israel, if a man went to inquire of God, he would say, come, let us go to the seer. This is that word seer is really important. Roe. Let's go to the roe, the seer. Because the prophet, the Navi, the prophet of today, used to be called a seer. Now, what's going on with that verse? Let me just kind of develop that a little bit, okay? He said, what we call today a Navi, a prophet, back in those days when Saul was running around the hills chasing his father's donkeys, was called a seer. What does that tell us about the date of writing of the book of 1 Samuel? Okay, in the book of Joshua, was the events of Joshua, the crossing of the Jordan River, the taking of walls of Jericho down and stuff. Were the events of Joshua happen here, were they recorded almost immediately? And they are there till this day. Who is alive till this day when the book of Joshua was actually written? Rahab the harlot. And Joshua says, hey, you don't believe me, go ask her. She's still alive. You can confirm everything I've written down here. Rahab the harlot and many of the people that crossed the Jordan River, they're still alive. Talk to them. So the events, historical events were here, and the writing was right next to it. Within that generation, it was written down within the same generation. Now, 1 Samuel. Question, were things written down immediately? Did Samuel probably take notes? And did Samuel probably have a diary, annals of Samuel, something like that? Yes, probably did. But was this thing written down so much later that the language had actually changed? That the prophet of today used to be called a seer? Does language change over time? But by the way, does it take time for language to change? So what I'm suggesting is here, the events of 1 Samuel are here, but the writing of the book is much later. Okay? Now, by the way, sometimes did the events happen and they were written down immediately. Here, is it clear that the language had time to change? Does the English language change? I ask how many of you, if I said to you the word cassette, how many would know what a cassette is? Okay? Okay. Let me go back a generation. If I said to you the word record, do you guys like a record? Like a real record? Like with the thing? Oh, is that okay? So you guys know what a record is, okay? But I guess let me go in the future. Let me go in the future then. Is it possible your children will not know what a CD or a DVD is? Is it possible that, no, seriously, your children will not know what a CD or DVD is? Because what? Everything's going on the cloud now, right? And so basically CDs, DVDs, they're becoming irrelevant, really. And so, I mean, you've got a couple of years before this actually pans out, but these things are going to be gone. Okay? An I what? Okay, let me get out of that. So anyway, so all I'm saying is the events happened here, but apparently the language had changed so that a seer of then is called a prophet. Now the language had actually changed. And the writer of Samuel comments about it and says the roe, the seer, is now called a prophet. The language had changed so much.